Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I'm sure many of you have heard that there's the new crowdfunding trust alliance with Indiegogo and GoFundMe initially on board. And I wanted to bring in my good friend Doug Ernst. You would have just seen his trailer for, is it Black Ops X Common America X Soulfinder?
Yeah, Timothy Lim and Mark Pellegrini have a story that they came up with for next summer that involves my characters, the Soulfinder characters, Father Redder and his friends. And it's pretty good. So I talked to Tim yesterday again about it, and I can't wait to see what they come up with. I told Tim years ago, because he was instrumental in getting Demon's Match off the ground, you got a blank check, man. Anytime you want to use these characters, they're all yours. And he decided to take it. So I can't wait. I'm supposed to get the first draft in the next couple days, but I already told Tim and Mark, I was like, I know you guys, it's going to be good. So I'm just going to be like, yep, sounds great. And I'll be waiting to see what they come up with, because they come up with some cool stuff.
Now, I imagine that book will be crowdfunded. You did crowdfund the first volume of Soulfinder, Demon's Match. Then you did not crowdfund the sequel to that. Are we going to get the third volume before the crossover?
So the third volume, Matt Weldon just sent me an image the other day of his floor in his house just filled with finished and mostly finished inks. So he's coming along with the third book. That will go directly to Iconic Comics again. That gets into what we're going to be talking about today. Mm-hmm. And then I want to coincide the release of an omnibus with the first 3 volumes with Tim's crossover next summer. But there's a lot of weird things going on with printing, so I need to handle all of that many, many months in advance. So I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability.
There's a lot of logistical stuff going on. But it does sound like you will not have to wait till next summer to see Father Redder. You will get the third volume likely before then, and then the omnibus about the same time as the crossover. So you know a thing or two about crowdfunding and what all these things are going about. A lot of people have turned to Indiegogo because it felt like Kickstarter had some more gatekeepers, and Kickstarter is not yet a part of the crowdfunding trust alliance. But Indiegogo is changing the way they do business. This is from the Verge article, shifting from an open platform where anyone can raise money for just about any purpose to a closed model where every campaign will receive a manual review before it can go live. Now, that doesn't sound all that bad. They're changing the way that they do things, probably lower the risk for the customers as far as the backers going into this. But as you get the details, and as I'm going to go along, they get worse and worse, Doug, and it feels like we might be getting some more gatekeeping, maybe in the vein of what Kickstarter was doing.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where they're, at least on a cursory level, on the surface, what they're saying makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. The head guy was saying, like, we don't want customers to be taking a total leap in the quote unquote leap in the dark. And when you have these campaigns over the past few years, and he even mentions high profile campaigns that have been late and basically screwed over their backers, that's a problem. It has a domino effect on everybody else within the community or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that makes sense that you would want to be transparent with people, as transparent as possible. But as you also said, when you start getting into internal review boards and manual reviews, who will be doing the reviewing and how is that going to play out in practice?
Yeah, how transparent. This is what Will Haines, the vice president of product and customer trust at Indiegogo, had to say. You just mentioned part of it. Crowdfunding is not shopping. People generally understand that now. But it also shouldn't be a leap in the dark. The risk has to be worth it, and backers need the tools to make an informed decision. Like I said, on the surface, that stuff all sounds great. You know, these are changes that you can kind of believe in, and there have been some very, very high-profile Indiegogo campaigns that we're talking raised, tens of millions of dollars that never fulfilled.
Right.
You don't want people that are part of the Indiegogo or Kickstarter or GoFundMe community that are going in there and crowdfunding these things, especially on a project that big, to not know whether or not they're going to get the product. So on the surface, I'm for it. Of course, they're always going to wrap these things in some type of a semblance of common sense, right? Even when we looked at the comic book union for Image Comics, their initial press release, well, I thought it was ridiculous. There was nothing really, bad about it. But once they started getting the details and the 9 things that they wanted, of course, they kind of all made sense until you got the very last one. And it was absolutely gatekeeping. And they wanted the ability to keep people out that they didn't agree with.
Right. Yeah, and that's where that alliance comes in. They talked about teaming up with GoFundMe, but GoFundMe has been in the news multiple times for all sorts of double standards and who they allow to fund and who they don't. And then they'll publicly say, well, we don't allow X, Y, and Z. But then you look and somebody else is exactly doing X, Y, and Z who happens to be in a group that they
can tell that
favor.
there's a purity test based on ideology.
Right. And so they always deny that sort of thing exists. But then when you dig into the details or you get into the weeds, you can find plenty of examples where they turned a blind eye to their own rules. And that's what I would worry about if I were hot and heavy into Indiegogo right now.
Absolutely, because they're partnering with GoFundMe. I imagine they're upping some of their standards. This is one of the weirder things that you mentioned a little bit earlier. Indiegogo has also created an internal review board to oversee and evaluate the riskiest campaigns on its platform as determined by its community of backers. The board can take action ranging from banning campaign owners from launching new campaigns, sending campaign owners to collections, and reporting them to law enforcement if necessary. That's a wide range of things that they could take against somebody for a potential comic book campaign or something like that.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where, again, if you have clear-cut rules and the rules are applied equally to everybody, I don't even have a problem with that. If you say my campaign will be delivered on X date and you are a year late, 2 years late, 2.5, 3 years late, I have no problem with Indiegogo throwing its rule book at your head and smacking you.
You don't have a problem with them maybe calling the FBI or law enforcement?
If there were I don't know how all that works, but if there were actual laws broken, sure. But in terms of just kicking you off the platform,
I got you.
Or that sort of thing, but that's not what they do. They selectively enforce the rules, and some people have special privileges,
yes,
and other people do not, and that's where I get kind of irritated.
Because you'll see there are certain people, across platforms or whatever it is that they're crowdfunding, and they don't exactly follow the Indiegogo rules, and that's okay because they've got like special permission or they have some type of deal that's behind the scenes that not every other creator on Indiegogo gets. So they're directly already going against their own terms of service by allowing these things to happen, and now they're going to start, tying down the enforcement, or whatever. It feels pretty hypocritical.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, if I see a campaign that is like blatantly violating Indiegogo, it's not my place to be the Indiegogo police. Like, I don't care about that. But at the same time, I'm going to roll my eyes and be like, your rules mean nothing to me. It's just like all the other social media platforms that have these vague and nebulous rules that they enforce whenever they want to. But yeah, I would hope that they would come out with very succinct, clear rules, and they're applied to everyone, and then we can operate from there. But when you're just willy-nilly sort of enforcing the rules, that's not cool.
And probably the most disturbing part, you definitely got into this earlier, but it says Indiegogo has partnered with fellow crowdfunding platform GoFundMe to create a new entity to establish best practices for the crowdfunding industry and to weed out bad actors who defraud well-meaning backers of crowdfunding campaigns. The problem is that GoFundMe has specifically gone out of their way to weed out people that aren't even bad actors. They've weeded out people based on, their political stances or their ideology and whatnot. They've applied a purity test. And of course, it's always behind closed doors. There's no transparency to it. I imagine that'll go right into Indiegogo now. And it says, the companies describe the Crowdfunding Trust Alliance, which is one of the scariest names I can imagine to put on something like this. It sounds like a government organization that would be the shadiest one you could ever imagine, as a way for platforms to work collectively towards the goal of creating clear trust and safety standards for the industry as a whole. And of course, I imagine they're going to invite Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms to come in on this.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter did that. They had I forgot what the exact name was, but essentially they were bringing in all of these left-wing activist groups that were, it was like, of course, that's who your arbiters of truth are, or, the Ministry of Truth for Twitter or whatever the heck it was. And it's just like, yeah, you pick people that have a clear agenda, and their bar or their litmus test for what is unacceptable is basically people that don't agree with that agenda, even if you're tactful, even if you're professional. And so you start going down a really shady road with some of these groups and organizations.
Absolutely. And I don't know, the cool thing about crowdfunding is that there was no longer a gatekeeper. At least it appears that way. That was the appearance, that there was nothing keeping a creator like yourself or Tim Lim or Eric Canetti or Mark Pellegrini from customers. The publishers didn't have to support you. This didn't have to support you. But if your customers supported you, you could get your product out there, and you could go out there and you could put it out there. I'm sure it'll be incremental, but within a few years, it'll be just like YouTube, where they keep moving the goalposts, and they're just wiping people out.
Yeah, they set a definition for what is radical or whatever. They'll find somebody who's on the fringe, and they take that guy out, and then it shrinks the board, and then there's a new person who's on the far right or whatever. Then we get okay, well, this guy's got to be taken out. So you are constantly narrowing the spectrum of ideological thought, getting rid of the problem individuals or whatnot. But this is something in 2018. You could go back to my videos and Timothy Lim's. We were saying, listen, you don't want to give these individuals any ammunition. If we're getting into crowdfunding, you have to deliver on time. The fulfillment needs to be there. The distribution needs to be there. You need to take this seriously, because if you don't, you'll get what we have now. Will Haines talking about, quote, a high-profile failure reflects on the whole industry. And that's exactly what we've seen. High-profile failures that are reflected on others, and they're using that as part of their excuse for putting in this trust and safety board or whatever the heck their Orwellian little name for it is. And it's like, again, you can't give them ammunition because they're always aiming for you. You're always in their crosshairs.
It's crazy. All these things, they always start out with the best of intentions, whether it be Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe. And of course they start out small, and they appreciate all the support or whatever, but they always end up getting so big, and then they feel like it's their duty to start policing their own customers at that point. And it's just this weird cycle, Doug. Are we ever going to get to a place where a company, despite getting big, doesn't decide that they're going to start policing or putting purity tests on their own customers? I've seen it so many times at this point, it gets rather frustrating.
Yeah, and even with YouTube, they did away with the downvote button now because of that, and that gets into all sorts of stuff. Hopefully the algorithm doesn't get you. You could edit this out if if that's the case, but it's like they're gearing it towards large corporations, so you can't downvote, the 2016 Ghostbusters or whatever it is. They don't like that. Or Captain Marvel.
There's a Fauci trailer for HBO Max or whatever. You can't downvote that.
Yeah, we don't want you to do that. So we only want you to be able to see the upvotes. And then at some point in time, they're going to further go after the comments sections. I know, like, there was a period of time where all sorts of stuff on my videos was going into the spam folder that I have no idea why it was.
Mine are just being deleted.
Right.
I keep getting my viewers are mad at me. They're like, stop deleting my comments. I don't delete comments. YouTube does it.
Yeah, that was something where I would have people like, it's the same thing where it's like, oh, well, suddenly you're against the First Amendment or something like that. And I was like, I didn't even see your comment. I go in there and it's like, oh, okay, now I can see why YouTube, there's certain words. And if you say that word combination as it pertains to a certain virus, it's going to disappear, dude. It has nothing to do with me. It's YouTube.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing. Obviously, yourself, Mark Pellegrini, Tim Lim, Eric Canetti, and the other creators at Iconic Comics Matthew Weldon, you guys at least have a backup plan. You have Iconic Comics. You got your own e-commerce site where you're able to sell your products and whatnot. So, if the worst should happen, and eventually, no offense, Doug, I don't think that what you do is controversial. I don't think what I do is controversial. I think eventually we will all be wiped out of here.
Right.
At least you have a backup plan. There are a lot of people out there that are that consider themselves professional creators, and they consider Indiegogo their marketplace to be able to get out their product out there and essentially take care of their families. And they don't have backup plans. Do you think everyone's going to be starting to look at the Iconic model where you have an e-commerce source and at least some other place to start doing to be able to sell your wares outside of this marketplace that is absolutely going to be gate kept and it's going to be shrunk down, and there are going to be purity tests put on creators?
I hope so. Like I said, myself and Tim and Mark have been talking about a lot of this stuff and warning about it since 2018. And we've always, whether it's about the logistics of fulfillment and distribution, or just even making comics in general, writing tips, Tim is very open about trying to help people and network in especially young upcoming creators and answering them on streams. But some people don't want to hear it. They just want to believe, in 2018, when we were talking about this, like, you're the killjoy because you're talking about these very unsexy things like fulfillment and distribution. It's like, hey, what about the 6 figures, man? 6 figures, all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, well, yeah, money is nice, but also, if you want to make money long term, you need to take care of all of this stuff that you don't want to concentrate on, that actually requires you to take some time away from social media and put your nose to the grindstone. And so if people want to listen to my advice when it's good advice, I would hope they would do that. But if they don't, and they want to just concentrate on the short run and making money in the short run, like, that's fine too. But you might find yourself kicked off Indiegogo or Kickstarter because of an alliance with GoFundMe and other people that don't like you.
The Crowdfunding Trust Alliance. And of course, the first rules are going to be, have you not fulfilled? Have you defrauded your backers or something like that, right? And that'll be the first set of people that are kicked off, not allowed to use the platform anymore. Of course, once that's done, Doug, they are not going to stop. We mentioned it kind of before. Then we will get that purity test. They're going to start going through your social media. What have you said on Twitter? What have you posted on Facebook? Do you have a YouTube channel? Have you said anything that we don't agree with? And they're going to start using that as they move the goalposts and whatnot. So people, if you want to be able to use these platforms freely, you're going to have to, you're going to have to edit yourself on social media and stuff, because that is going to eventually, it's guaranteed, like the social credit score. Right. It is not a pie in the sky idea. It's an inevitability, and it will certainly come to Indiegogo. So, you might want to clean up your social media history, and you got to kind of mind your P's and Q's on what you can talk about. You don't even have to say anything bad anymore, Doug, for you to.
Years ago on Twitter, when I was working at the newspaper, I wrote a piece on Iran and a military story. And somebody tweeted at me that they were going to hunt me down and find me and take me out. And you can say, like, well, maybe he was serious, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I reported it. Twitter came back to me and said, we did not find anything wrong with this tweet. It was not a violation of rules. So then I laughed at Twitter support, and they banned me for like 30 or 40 days. I was completely kicked off, and I had to get with the then CEO at the time, Dick Costello. I had to write him personally in order to get my account back. And that was a miracle in and of itself. But so that was back then. Again, if you were you're always on their radar. And if they scroll through your feed and they find the wrong opinion or whatever, they will use any excuse to take you out. And I can see that happening with Indiegogo. And even once they have the rules, say the rules are in place, you can then have groups of individuals who weaponize the knowledge of that rule, where you might have a wave of people, they back your campaign, and then a wave of those people then refund you and then complain to Indiegogo that you are in violation of, some hate monger rules or something. And if they like the people that are complaining about you, whoop, I can see situations where they would totally weaponize this alliance.
Absolutely. Anything called the Crowdfunding Trust Alliance should not be trusted. It's like it's Orwellian doublespeak, you know, it's where they're churning words and phrases on their head. So this, in my opinion, this will it'll look probably pretty okay to begin with, but it will absolutely be weaponized against people and their personal views. You got to mind your P's and Q's. You need to be fulfilling on time and whatnot, but also eventually they will start coming for you because of your beliefs.
There are people.
I'm sorry.
No, there are people that call the Soul Finder books online. Just recently, a week ago, there was another one who actually, no, they came in my YouTube comments section and was calling my books, quote unquote, right wing. My books are not right wing at all. The story comes first. The character comes first. They happen to be good men who are Catholic priests, combat veterans, but my books are not right wing. So you have a population of people out there that are already framing my own books as something that they are not, to poison the well against me and get people, away from my books and my IPs. And they will do the same thing to Timothy Lim and Mark Pellegrini and call their books the Common America books or the Black Hops, all of that. They will frame it in a way that is the worst possible framing in order to sully their reputation. And I just see that down the line that will continue and get worse.
Absolutely. So I do think this is a dark day. It's bad news. I do want to say thank you very much to Doug Ertz for showing up here. Obviously, do we have the first 2 volumes of Soul Finder right now at Iconic? People haven't checked it out?
Yep, iconiccomics.com, Soul Finder Demons Match, and Soul Finder Black Tide. I'm actually sending a whole new slew of Demons Match to Texas this week because they're about out of their current stock. So those, if they are out of stock in the near future, they will be back in stock as soon as they arrive down in Texas.
So definitely, if you are interested in the big crossover, you're going to want to get the first 2 volumes. Sounds like there will be a 3rd volume in the meantime that arrives, and definitely get on board. Thank you very much, Doug. I really appreciate your time.
Cool. Thanks for having me, man.